Sometimes what money buys from government is not action, but no action, stalemate. Take health care. There's no way Washington cannot hear the clamor to change a system whose costs are out of control and out of reach of vast numbers of people. Yet nothing happens. To find out why, you have to watch those millions of dollars in campaign contributions making their way from the health care industry into the coffers of Democrats and Republicans alike.
Why don't you tell me what's wrong?
For most Americans, it's their worst nightmare. A sudden serious illness, the need for expensive hospital care, an accident that could wipe out your savings overnight. Many of the people who line up in the emergency rooms of big city hospitals are on fixed incomes, or they have no jobs. But this is not just a crisis for the poor. 35 million Americans have no health insurance, many of them in the middle class. 9 out of 10 Americans say America's healthcare system needs drastic overhaul. But they are waiting in the wrong line. It's 8 a.m. and the line has already started to form. A seat in this dreary corridor is one of the most valuable pieces of real estate in Washington.
I'm not sure if anybody's been invited or not.
People wait 2 hours or more just to make sure they get a good seat for the most important show in town. Today's hearing in the House Ways and Means Committee. These people mostly represent special interest in the healthcare industry. Doctors and pharmaceutical companies, hospitals and insurance companies, lobbyists with a job to do.
First, we want a proposal that guarantees every American will be covered by health insurance when it certainly is fully implemented.
There are no casual observers in this room. These lobbyists are here to listen to the administration's health care reform package, to make sure their client comes out a winner.
In the 4th year of his presidency, President Bush has finally come up with a plan to reform our health care system.
President Bush's moderate reform plan was applauded by lobbyists from the insurance industry and criticized by public interest groups.
The president's plan fails to address these two issues of paramount importance to the American people.
Congressman Don Pease from the 13th District of Ohio has watched this scene for the past 16 years.
Well, there are not very many constituents, actual residents of my district in the room, hardly ever. Constituents don't travel from Ohio or from Oklahoma or from Tennessee to Washington very often, whereas the PAC people are here all the time.
The president's plan makes a clear
Members do try to represent their constituents, but there's no one there who represents the public interest, say, poor people who don't have health insurance. Their positions may tend to get overlooked, not deliberately, but because they're not in that lobbying game.
I think that people out there don't really know the extent to which this game is played in Washington.
Vivica Novak and Vicki Kemper of Common Cause investigated the healthcare lobby.
We found that there are more than 200 medical industry PACs, that they have given over the last 10 years more than $60 million to congressional candidates. We have also found that there has been no major discussion of healthcare reform over the last decade.
Money is clearly what makes this town work or not work. Sometimes the whole object is to gum up the works.
To make things not happen.
To make things not happen, to prevent a bill from becoming law.
In the last decade, members of the Ways and Means Committee have received, on average, more than $160,000 in campaign contributions from the healthcare industry. House and Senate leadership averaged more than $250,000. Congress is now considering more than 30 healthcare reform bills, many written by the industry itself.
Many of these groups say they have reform proposals. Everything is cloaked in reform. I bet you those 60 bills, reform is used hundreds of times in all those bills that are introduced. But the wheels of government are completely intractable and are locked in because you've got all these moneyed forces all aligned to basically slow it up.
Campaign contributions by the healthcare lobby have had one obvious effect. Everyone with a stake in the status quo, doctors and insurance companies, hospitals and pharmaceutical companies, hundreds of healthcare PACs have paralyzed Congress.
What's best for the country, what is most efficient, is not the primary goal in this system. What seems to be the most important thing is survival of a member of Congress or of a particular industry.
You still have Democrats and Republicans, but I think more and more the important parties are the incumbent party and the non-incumbent party.
When there is no incumbent in a race, the healthcare industry tends to cover its bets. Take the last race for Rhode Island's 2nd District. John Reed versus Trudy Cox. The American Healthcare Association gave both candidates the same amount on the same day. So did the Corporation for the Advancement of Psychiatry. So did the American Hospital Association. But the National Association of Life Underwriters bet $3,000 on Republican Trudy Cox. After she lost, they gave the same amount to the winner. Money intended to make the new congressman think twice on health care issues.
The temptation is always there to say, well, on this issue, it's not close. My vote's not going to decide the issue. Why should I offend this powerful group? I'll just vote the way they want me to, even though in my mind and heart I have an idea that the other way may be the right way to vote.
And as long as the incumbent votes the right way, the money keeps on flowing. In the last race for Virginia's 8th District, incumbent Stan Paris was challenged by Democrat James Moran. Republican Paris was the darling of the American Medical Association. It gave the Paris campaign 4 separate contributions totaling $10,000, the legal maximum. But when Paris lost, the AMA sent a $5,000 check to the new incumbent, James Moran.
This is the cover your bases strategy. Put the money where you're going to get most for your buck.
So while the cost of health care doubles every 6 years, and citizens are overwhelmed by the health care crisis,
the president's plan makes a clear statement.
Congress mostly talks, the administration tinkers, and the lobbyists hover. There will be an accounting on how each member voted when the time comes to ask for campaign contributions.
Cost jobs for those who can least afford to lose their jobs.
And there will be plenty of health care money for members who vote the right way. Don Pease, for one, has decided to give up the money chase. He'll retire at the end of this term, frustrated by money's effect on politics, by a Congress held hostage.
It's not as much fun to be in Congress, to spend all the money that you have to spend the time raising the money, and then to have the frustrations of trying to get accomplished things that you really feel strongly about. I'm a problem-solving kind of a person. We ought to be telling people some things they don't want to hear. And members say, well, why should I do that? I might lose. I'll just be quiet and let things get worse and worse. I do despair sometimes about how we're going to resolve that.